Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the FIDE Grand Prix. It's time for the knockout stages, and there is a chair right next to me because I'm actually testing out this new one today. Don't worry, Levy's chair has not lost its job. But today we've got Hikaru going up against Richard Rapport in one group, and we have Levon Ranyan taking on Lenier Dominguez. Perez, who defeated Wesley So in the tiebreak yesterday. I didn't want to make a separate recap for that. And today's video is called what it's called because one of these games that you're about to witness, this one, really looks like a Guess the Elo submission, minus the horrendous blunders, although we actually get some of those as well. So I hope you're ready as we are awaiting a Grand Prix winner. Levon begins the game with d4, and Lenier with the black pieces plays the Queen's Gambit accepted. He accepts the offering, he forces the action, he's not interested in playing knight f6, e6 and going into Catalans. He has a really simple solution to white playing the Queen's Gambit, and it's taking the pawn, and it's for good reason, because nowadays people generally go for the classical main line, and he's basically guaranteed this position all the time. So if he can study this position, he will be in good shape. However, Levon plays e4. Now, generally, the super GMs are not playing e4 because it leads to really forcing variations where the difference being between the other line and this line, oftentimes black can really force a clarification and a transformation of the position. But, big but, well, that could have been phrased slightly better, but, you know, who doesn't like that? E4 is met with b5. Now, b5 is a very provocative move. Generally, black plays knight f6 or knight c6 or even e4, e5. This is actually known as the main line. But Dominguez Perez plays this, and he has played this already before a couple of days ago. He played this against Wesley So. The point is that he's just going to hang on to this pawn. And the reason this is provocative is because white just gets an open file. Pressure here. Black has to be ultra careful. Just ultra careful. They used to do this, but this is just simply too passive, and white can dominate the center, and white is just much better. They tried this for a while, where black literally sacrifices this rook for activity. It's not that bad, actually. It's really not that bad. But nowadays, this has become very trendy. Now, queen b6 is exactly what Lenier played against Wesley, and Wesley played some b3 move. He played this, and, you know, they had a game. Wesley was slightly better, but was unable to convert. Now, the absolutely shocking thing for me is that he played into this again. Lenier did this again. I mean, this, like, if a guy, Levon Strength, who has the 4th highest rating ever, 2835, 4 times candidates participant, #1 player in America. I mean, his federation became America officially like a month ago, but okay. You can't play this, and this is just my opinion. I don't dare impose myself, but this is so rare. And in the Queen's Gambit accepted, there are much more solid ways to play. And Levon, folks, I think you know where I'm headed with this. Levon's not going to play some baby positional advantage with b3. He's not going to do that. He's going to go for the main line. Knight d5 attacks the queen. He is intending to prove why this position is bad for black, okay? Knight d5 is considered the main line. It's actually not the computer's top choice. Like when you first plug it in, it is. b3 is actually the computer's top choice, ironically. Knight d5, queen b7, bishop f4. So this is the point. This is you trying to completely refute black's idea. e5, an absolutely shocking counterattack. Point being that if you take like this, you block everything. So this already looks completely absurd. I mean, it looks like two 800s are playing, but they're playing all the stockfish moves. Bishop takes e5, so it's like, well, you haven't done anything to stop this. Black's like, I never wanted to do anything to stop it, actually. I just lure your bishop forward. That's all I wanted. I got your bishop closer so that now if you play knight c7, and if you take my rook, then I play bishop to b4. And since I lured your bishop closer, you can no longer block, and you can hang a mate, which would have been a really beautiful ending to this game, except if both of them had like 2,000 rating less. But that's the entire purpose of knight d7. Now, what does Levon do? He just goes back to f4. Now, this position has actually been reached like 4 times in the database. And black just goes here and allows knight c7 and allows knight a8. I mean, it literally looks like 2 beginners are playing, but they're following the top line of stockfish. It's insane, and it's going to get even more insane. Before black takes the knight, black takes with check. Okay, reasonable. White plays knight e2, defending the bishop. Not crazy, queen a8. Okay, potentially the two most logical moves we've seen thus far. Now, in this position, Levon plays an idea that has never been played before, and that is f3. I think f3 on its own might have been played once. The point is you cut the queen's pressure on this diagonal. Lenier plays knight to d5, which is trying to win this bishop. And here, Stockfish gives a retreating move right away, but Levon gives a check, okay? This check is intending to ask black what black is wanting with the position. And it's never been played before. But the amazing thing is, according to Leela, and I did some analysis with Leela while this game was going on, any of the moves are okay. So Leela evaluates many of the moves around the same and says that black must play knight 7f6. 7f6 because 5 is not going backwards, right? This is what the engine wants to open up the bishop. This bishop will come here. Lenier thinks here for a while and plays f6, and now we have the retreat. So what does Levon want with this? The knight can no longer go to f6. The slightest of changes to the position. And Levon backs up, still backed by Leela, up 40 minutes on the clock. 40 minutes! He hasn't thought. He hasn't thought once. All these moves he blitzed out. Bishop d6. Okay? Now, I analyzed this with Leela. After bishop d6, Leela's top engine moves are moving this knight and king to f2. And Levon plays knight to g3. Opening up his king, he has maybe intentions of moving the knight and targeting the bishop, and the king will hide right next to the knight. Actually, Stockfish here doesn't even realize that, like, how nifty of a move this is, but white has a very simple plan of action because black can no longer move the knight to f6. This is what Levon came prepared with. Now, Lenier here spent about 15 minutes, almost 20 minutes, and he played the only move. The only move, queen b8. Queen b8. Now, white here plays king f2 defending, although the engine even likes this. It's being very provocative. It's like, yeah, good luck. Good luck winning this position. But Levon here follows a simple game plan, which is, he plays king f2, which is defending his knight, and now bishop to e2. And what is his idea? He wants to play rook e1, and he wants to hide his king. Levon came prepared to this game with 20 moves of prep. 20. Right around here, maybe he just knew the game plan. He just knew that, okay, I'm going to go bishop e2, rook here, and king g1. He is up nearly an hour on the clock. And if he had wanted to sacrifice his bishop here, we would have had every square on the d file occupied. You ever seen something like that before? What the hell is that? What is that? Looks ridiculous. Sell it for an NFT from this video. Yeah, I mean, obviously you're going to lose your bishop, but you get what I'm saying. Absurd position. Now, Lenier is stuck. Because the thing is, what does he do? What does he do? Like, what does he do? He can't move his knight to f6. You know what? You know what the computer actually wanted? The computer wanted him at some point to play f5. Not right away, because this move would come with a tempo. But if, like, he rotated his bishop, maybe, and then played f5. You know, like, no, but seriously, I mean, what, g6, f5? I don't know. Maybe g6, h5. Now, the question is, do you want to play there, or do you want to play here? And try to, I don't know. Thank God I'm not playing the game. So he plays bishop c7. The idea of bishop c7 is quite obvious. He would like to play bishop to b6. And then he would like to take on d4. Right? Levon plays rook e1. And now, again, you can play f5. If knight takes f5, in this case, there's no bishop, and also the rook is gone. So you have some annoying ideas in the future to maybe hit this once you kick this knight out. f5 could have been an interesting idea, but Lenier plays bishop b6. By the way, we've played 20 moves of this guess the ELO looking game. And neither side has castled. So both guys decided not to castle in this game. One guy lost the rook very early. And one guy just basically walked his king. Like, he chose to walk his king. And the amazing thing about bishop to b6 attacking this, like, maybe here Lenier thought, okay, he's going to play bishop a5 because, you know, he can't let me take the pawn. You know what the craziest thing is? You can actually just let black take. You can actually just straight up let black take on d4 with check. Because you know what happens when your king goes to h1? Nothing happens. Yeah, nothing happens. And for example, if bishop takes b2, just gobbling everything. Actually, black's king is significantly weaker. Like knight b6, queen takes d5, you lose. I mean, you just get smashed. So this pawn cannot be taken. So Lenier just spent an hour of time making a plan that doesn't work. Imagine that. Imagine sitting as the entire world watches you play chess, because the world's not watching anything else today. There are absolutely no other events, really. You know, the whole world's watching. You're down an hour on the clock in this game. You have to come up with a plan, and you come up with a plan, and the plan doesn't work at all. It just doesn't work. So Lanier plays knight e5. He's like, all right, you know what? I'm not going to take this pawn. Fine. I'm just going to activate my knight. You can't take me. You're pinned. And then Levon's like, and? King h1. The craziest thing is, here, the computer was giving like knight f8, and it was saying black is worse, but not losing by this maneuver. But when knight e5 appeared, my Stockfish was saying it's +5. Like just +5. Stockfish thinks that this reroute to c6 b6 is like +4.5, +4.7 for white. It just immediately sees the complete collapse of the black position. White to move, collapse the black position. Go ahead, solve it, folks. Looks pretty difficult, right? Easier said than done. b3. Long time ago, Wesley So, right? Move 5, played this against Lanier. But this is the move you have to use. Now, if c3, beautiful move here. Bishop takes b5. And now your king is feeling a little bit airy, right? So we have bishop d7. Levon swaps rooks. Just chop off a rook. Moves his bishop out of the way. And here's the thing. If Lanier doesn't take this pawn, Levon's going to do whatever he wants. He's going to play knight e2. He's going to take. He's going to get the blockade, and he's going to push. So Lanier has to take. The problem is that now if you take, I go here. Now you can throw in this move. Rest assured, folks, if you played this with white, even if I played this with white, we might lose this game because black has a pass pawn on c2 and well-protected pieces. I'm telling you, it's one of the strangest games I've ever seen. This is why I named this video what I named it, because what the hell are we even looking at? From this point forward, Levon proceeds to play the purest form of Stockfish moves, and it looks so absurd. So he plays queen d3, okay? King takes e8, and now he plays bishop d2. Now, the thing is, bishop d2 actually allows black to kind of activate his position. Like, bishop d2 wasn't completely necessary. It was actually better to put the bishop on f2, I think, in the long run, or this diagonal, and begin with knight e2, but I digress. Bishop d2, queen e5, and now rook c1. f5, queen c4. Now, Lanier could have played slightly better. He could have played here. I think here, Stockfish wanted king f7. Yeah, I think I actually gave Levon a bit too much credit before the move bishop d2, but after the move bishop d2, he did play quite similar to what Stockfish wanted. Here, yeah, king f7 was necessary, but it's an incredibly difficult position, and don't forget that white is an hour up on the clock. So yeah, f5, queen c4, and the queen just touches everybody up. Queen c8, knight into e3, queen infiltrates, attacking the king. Absurd looking position. I mean, just completely. The king gets hunted out, and now it's white to play and win. The only move that wins for white. And Levon finds it. Levon finds the only move. For example, if you just try to take the knight here, you just straight up lose the game on the spot, which is, again, why this game is balancing between two 2760 rated GMs playing it, and guess the elo, and the move is f4. This amazing move deflects the queen from the necessary squares. So f4, if you take, I have queen e8, and I win your knight. Incredible move. Queen e6, now I begin trading. And there was one final moment in this game. Levon had to get his king some breathing room. He did do just that. He gave his king some breathing room. But it's never too late to lose. For example, here, if you play king to f3, then after knight takes d2, rook d2, knight e1 is a mate. Well done. You did it. You hung a mate. Look at that. With no pieces left on the board, you somehow mated yourself. It's never too late to submit for guess the elo. Instead, Levon plays knight to c1, and Lanier resigns because it's the end game. And, you know, on the one hand, he could continue the game from like a position like this, but he is just down way too much material to be comfortable. White can win in a variety of ways. Bishop here. I think Lanier at this point just had enough. He was kind of like, all right, I mean, Levon's not going to lose. He definitely could play on but he decided not to burn any more energy. And if you're playing this with black, 100% play on. A good rule of thumb for beginners, if there's knights on the board, don't resign. That knight could fork everything. Honestly, everything. So just don't ever resign with knights on the board. So Levon takes a 1-0 lead in his match, but we still got Hikaru and Report. I'm so excited. And dehydrated. I just spit. Hopefully you guys did not see that. And maybe now that I said it out loud, you will backtrack in the video and you will locate it. I don't know why I said it. Anyway, I digress. D4, knight f6. And here is something very interesting. I don't understand why Report did not go for the Nimso. Maybe he hadn't anticipated that he would be playing into a Nimso, because if you play e6, you don't do this. I mean, you play this with black because you're going to play the Nimso. You don't play that. So maybe he was anticipating knight f3, d5, knight c3. Maybe he had prepared this position and he was like, okay, I mean, this is what's going to happen. Because the thing is, you should just play d5. And now, you know, I don't know. I'm very perplexed because this allows what's known as the exchange variation of the QGD. I don't know, maybe Report wanted it. I have no idea, but it's a slightly different setup in the QGD. Queen's Gambit declined. Now, notice that white is developing very naturally. Normally black castles, white plays knight e2 and tries to play f3, e4. This is the advantage of the exchange. Queen's Gambit declined when black has a knight on f6. Nowadays, it is considered meta in the Queen's Gambit declined to not play knight f6 in this position, but to play bishop to e7. This is actually this looks slightly shocking. This might be weird for beginners and intermediate players, but the benefit is in this move order that black has not yet done this. So white has to commit something first. And yeah, I mean, that's just a fundamental difference. So for example, bishop f4 leads to entirely different positions. You can't play bishop g5, which is exactly what Hikaru got in the game. So it just leads to slightly different stuff. Now, there are two approaches by black. Like I said, one is short castle, one is knight h5. This is a more modern approach, I would say, although it has obviously been played over the years, and you just want to trade bishops. That's just what you want. You move your knight out to h5, white castles long, knight b6. Now, up until this point in the game, Hikaru had this before. He had this with white in 2017 in the US Championship against Alexander Onishuk. So that game proceeded bishop e6. In this game, we got knight back to g7, so he decides to rotate the knight around this way, maybe play bishop f5, and for that reason, Hikaru plays g4, simultaneously restricting the bishop and the horsey of black. So, Report's like, all right, I can't go to f5. Also, castling short at this point looks kind of idiotic. White will go here, h4, h5, checkmate. So, I am going to castle long. Okay, fantastic. Now, both players castle long, king b1 and king to b8, making sure that the kings are off the c-file if a battle ensues over there. Very interesting game, and up until this moment, the players were following the game Garry Kasparov versus Smyslov from the 1988 USSR Championships. And that game was drawn like 8 moves later because white got nothing. So, what are the game plans? Well, you have to, in positions like this, obviously look at the pawn play because both sides have 7 pawns. It means that at any moment, one of them can lash out at the other or blockade the other structure. You're looking at squares. White is looking at e5, c5, and getting a knight to f4. Black may be looking at c4, maybe looking at e4, but other than that, black actually is slightly restricted. Black is sort of relying on lashing out with one of these breaks. But black can't rush because, again, you know, white is very slowly encroaching. Like if black rushes, white is going to shut everything down. h4, knight f4, dominate on the dark squares. And if we can compare the quality of light squared bishops and the knights, white is better, like a lot better. So black has to be a little bit careful. Knight goes back to e8 because it was trash on g7. Hikaru activates his knight. Report brings the knight to d6. Okay, so the knight is much better. You see black fighting for his complex. White might be fighting for his complex. At this point in the game, the players can basically just do nothing. I mean, literally, they can shuffle back and forth. Nobody makes any forward progress. But you're playing with white. Let's pose some problems. a4. Okay, we're moving a pawn in front of our king, but it has positional ideas. Number one, if black gets scared, well, that's much more of a weakness than this. So, for example, queen c3, and you think, oh, I got your pawn. Your knight is trapped, stupid. Oh, I have b5, Gotham. You're so bad. Okay, b5 is such a bad move on so many levels. Number one, maybe your knight is still trapped. Number two, you just lose because c6 falls with check. I family fork you, okay? So that's just not any good at all. And if you don't play a5, well, I'm probably going to play a5 myself. So here, Report thinks for a while, and he shoves this knight into c4. So the battle of the dark squares versus the battle of the light squares. Now, Hikaru thinks for a while here and has a very nice positional idea, and it's the fact that he has a5. Now, a5, it just looks like a loss of material, but the knights are the problem here. These knights are trash. Queen c5. Now you have to take or else you lose your knight, and I'm going to lodge my pawn into the territory. Knight a4 looks like a decent move until you realize that white can play something like knight d4, hitting the bishop. Let's say black plays rook here, defending the bishop, and I play b3. You lose your knight, you cry, I laugh at you. Life is good. So taking on a5 is very dangerous. It doesn't lead to the loss of a knight, but it could lead to some positional problems, like this knight not being very good. White can then take, harass your bishop, harass your pawn, harass your c-pawn, harass you on the d5. A lot of harassment in this game. A lot of harassment. I think there's going to be a letter to the HR after this tournament, after this game is over. So yeah, not very good at all. So Report doesn't subject himself to this torture and instead plays queen b4. Queen b4 looks like it loses a knight, but knight to a3, and we have this, right? So that's not good at all. So Hikaru goes queen c3 and still loses a pawn. However, he has knight g5. He also has knight here, and a ridiculous computer suggestion, knight d2. The point of knight d2 is to remove the squares from these pieces and to play something like f4 and b4 to just have more space, get the pawn back on the c4 square and be slightly better. Instead of that, Hikaru plays more actively. Report plays rook f8. The point of rook f8 is a tactical defense. He's like, you want to take on e6? Yes, of course. I don't know why he sounds like that, but right, he's creating a counterattack. Hikaru, though, sacks his bishop on the g6 square. If you take me, then I go boom, and then if you go boom, I go boom, and oops. So that's not any good. So Report swoops in with the knight and attacks Hikaru's rook. Hikaru takes on e6. He responds by recapturing, and here Hikaru sacrifices his rook. So he just comes back, and he just doesn't have a rook. But my God, he has an annoying position. It's really annoying because it's really tough for black to do anything. Like, he just has G and H pawns. You know what's going to happen with G and H pawns? He's going to push them. He's going to play G5, H4, H5, H6, blah, 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 blah. Now, Computer is not scared. Computer plays Rook H6, gives a giant middle finger to white, and says, yeah, do your worst. Do your worst. Come on. Come and get me. Because how do you do it? For example, if you play knight G3, I'm going to go knight D7. Okay, push a pawn. Try to push something. Oh, you can't. You can't. So, okay, you want to play F3 and try to play H4. Okay, great. Rook F8. Oh, F4? Great. Rook H4. The computer is convinced there is no danger here. But this is not what a human does. A human doesn't see an avalanche coming and go, it's going to stop before it gets to me. Well, I don't know. Maybe I feel like some of the people who submit for Guess the Elo might do that. Like, humans don't do that. They don't see a falling avalanche and just go, nah, it's going to stop. You know what? I'm willing to bet in the annals of human history, someone has done that. So what does Report do? He sees an avalanche coming, so he sacrifices his rook. And he's going to win the pawn back, so he's not going to be any pawns down. And he's like, I'm going to defend this position. And Hikaru's like, you really think you're going to defend this position? It's a rook endgame with an outside passer and bishop versus knight. I have the two things that you want in a rook endgame. So he starts bringing his king. Now the king starts walking. You know, you guys know that wide Putin walk? Yeah, this is wide Hikaru walk. He just walks to g4. No, black arrives as well. So now what? Notice how now the entire game is being played on this rectangle after being played on this rectangle. Nobody's moved the center pawn in a while. So, rook h3. Knight tries to come back. Bishop g6. This is a very common thing to do with an outside pass pawn. Knight d6. We have king g5, a5. It's a little bit of queenside stuff. So now what? What is the game plan here for white? The game plan is to prevent knight e4. So, for example, b5. Prevent knight e4 and play rook to f6. That would be tragic. Rook f6, take. take, boom, boom, take. Also give a check and take the rook. Rook f6, no knight e4, no checks, game over. And if black tries to get his rook back into the game with a move like rook h8, that's adorable. Where are you going? If you go here, I have check. So I use my outside pass pawn. So Report sacrifices a pawn. He sacrifices a pawn to bring his rook back into the game and activate his rook to go eat some of Hikaru's pawns. So what happens here? We are about to have a very wild endgame. Now again, this is just following our theme of the day. One guy has 3 passed pawns. The other guy has 2 on the opposite side. What the hell is going on? Together, they almost complete the alphabet. In fact, they all, literally, I mean, the king's on the G file. They all have completely different pawns. Such a wild position, right? So how the hell does white win? White wins by promoting, and black wins, well, black wins if white is like a complete idiot, but black wins if black promotes his pawns first. So black is going to put his rook behind the pawn and try to queen. White is going to put his rook behind the pawn and try to queen. But what's the kicker in rook endgames, folks? It's the kings. Now both sides begin pushing their pawns and trying to win a pawn from each other. So king h7, rook a7. Now notice, Hikaru could try to take this pawn, right? But taking his eye off the a pawn or the b pawn will screw him up. One move. You take one pawn, you go one wrong pawn. I got rook b2, and now it's too late. You are now losing this race, because what happens? What happens? I can check you, I can stop by, right? I can protect myself. I can protect this way, and you're just too slow. You're not gonna stop 2 of my pawns. I got there first. It's a race. I have to keep an eye on you, and I have to stop your pawn. I have to promote my pawns as well. So Hikaru has to give some checks. But how is he gonna win? He's gonna win by pushing. He's gonna win. Now he has 2 pawns that are 3 squares away from promotion. Black also, but he has a rook in the way. At some point, black's gonna have to bail out. Rook a1. Now here, by the way, I think king f5 might be the only winning move. The only winning move. So for example, let's say Hikaru plays e7, rook e2. Oops. And if you play rook a7, king h6, it's incredible. Black actually has the more scary pawns. Crazy. I mean, 2 pawns roll together super quickly. The only winning move is to bring the king. It's the fact that white's king is the difference maker. Rook a1, rook b6, have to stop the pawn. King walks up, and now Report tries one last desperate measure. He takes a pawn with check and does a sneak behind. Don't queen just yet. Don't queen just yet and get x-rayed. King d6. Now you escort the pawn, and Report plays c5. One final attempt. Again, if you rush, then I take, and I take, and the rook cannot stop 3 pawns. The rook cannot prevent all 3 pawns from walking in. Rook d6 here. Let's say you try to get the pawns to the back rank. a3, rook f1, a2, b2. Oh my god, white loses. There are ways to lose this position. There are. You might, I might. But we're talking about Hikaru. He takes on c5, and black can't push either pawn. Report plays rook d1, gives a couple of checks. Hikaru hides behind his c-pawn and says, go ahead, Richard, take this pawn, because after I apologize. After this, you can't get behind your own pawn. So, b2, and on move 71, Richard Report resigns. And this dude, Hikaru, has just won his last 3 games with white. He beat Yesipenko, Grishuk, and Report on the live rankings. He has 3 wins and 3 wins and 3 draws. 3 wins, 3 draws, or what? 3 wins, 4 draws. Hikaru's up to number 17 in the world, and if he gains 3 more points, he's up to number 15. Yeah, he's up 2 spots. He started this tournament top 20, up to 17th in the world, 27, slowly approaching back to 2750. Tomorrow, Dominguez and Report have to win on demand to force a rapid tiebreak. And yeah, wow, some wild games today, some really wild and strange positions. And tomorrow we will know who our 2 finalists are, or we will know if we have to go watch a playoff. Hope you enjoyed. I will see you tomorrow. Get out of here.